started out as a rag brand writer with my brother and the crew. And then, when I was starting to grad, and we so she told me to voice. So I voiced for about half a dozen years.
Thank you. It is 7:01. Hello and welcome to our forum. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Karen Franklin. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and I'm going to be moderating the forum tonight. Our timekeeper is League member Jan Borman. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer, nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any party or candidate. The League does take position on issues after considerable study on those issues. We work to not only register voters, but to inform voters, to provide them from information on issues to assist their participation in government. Membership is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. So you could all be members. Join us. We can use your time, your talent, and of course, your financial resources. League members advocate and inform voters. Democracy works best when more people are involved. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates. The format for the is as follows. After the candidates have been introduced, they will each give a 2-minute opening statement. We will then present questions to them. Our schedule of questions comes from polling League members as well as questions that we get from you, the audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. We're scheduled for an hour. Near the end of our scheduled time for this event, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. And speaking order will be rotated as we go out through the evening. Our timekeeper will be using cards to alert candidates when time is about up and then when time is up. League members, I think you've all gotten cards already as you came in to do questions if you wished. If you need another card. Anybody need a card? Yeah. We have them. Submit your written questions for the candidates. Hold up your cards. The League members will collect them and then they will give them to me. Questions that fall in the same general category may be consolidated. If time does not allow for all questions to be addressed, I'm sure that the candidates would be happy to talk to you after this forum or in any other venue. Early voting at the auditor's office begins October 16th, not very far away. Election day is November 5th. Candidates for offices that we are considering tonight, first for Senate District 46, Ed Chauvel, and then his opponent is Dawn Driscoll. Unfortunately, Dawn is not here this evening. House District 91, Jay Gorsh. And Mr. Gorsh's opponent is Judd Waller, who also did not respond to our invitation. And then House District 92, and Anna Banowski, whose opponent is Heather Hora, who likewise did not respond to our invitation. So let's begin with our 2-minute opening statements, and Mr. Chauvel, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight. I think it is very important that the voters do see what our issues are and how our stance is on those issues. And that, to me, that is the way democracy needs to run. Voters need to make sure that they know the background that we have. So again, I'm running for Iowa Senate District 46, which includes all of Washington County, all of Iowa County, and kind of rural Johnson County. I grew up on a farm in Washington County here, between Washington and Kelowna. I graduated from Mount Pleasant Community School District, from Mid Prairie Community School District. I'm sorry about that. So I went basically to school, like a couple blocks away from here, to elementary and to middle school. So I know how important schools are to rural communities. So that is what I'm running on, basically. The public schools are my passion. I worked for 27 years as finance director for Mount Pleasant Community Schools. And again, I have seen the last several years what the low funding has been for the schools, what the voucher program has done to public schools, and also for what the AEA reorganization has done. And to me, that is kind of tearing apart the public schools. And so again, that is my reason for entering the race. And again, I thank you for hosting and also for all those in attendance tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Gorsh, you're next.
Hi, Jay Gorsh, Williamsburg, Iowa. I was born and raised there. I moved away and then moved back about 8 years ago. I am collegiately, I am a Panther, Screaming Eagle. If anyone knows that one, I'll be impressed. And a Hawkeye. I currently work for the university and run outdoor education programs. So a big thing for me, and I think the fact that the three of us are here is of note. To me, stakeholder involvement is critical. I think that is probably the most important piece as we move forward, is making sure that we are involving the key stakeholders in the decisions that we are making. In my day job, I am very careful to make sure that I am getting perspective from all of the stakeholders. And in my home, I am very careful to make sure that I get input from all of our stakeholders. And I think the same is true in this situation. Politics is a little new to me, but I did spend a little bit of time studying educational policy when I was in my PhD program at the University of Iowa, and had the pleasure of spending a week in DC on Capitol Hill, learning a little bit about how things tick there. Education is a huge issue for me. I was a teacher for a decade. I work in the College of Education and I run an educational program. So that's issue number one for me. Because what I do now is outdoor education, and because I grew up camping and hunting as a kid, conservation is a key thing for me right now and has been throughout my life. And there are definitely concerns that I have about conservation in our state. So I'm hoping to be elected and can help address that too.
Thank you. Ms. Banowski.
Hello, I'm Anna Banowski. I'm running for House District 92, which is all of Washington County and half of rural Johnson County. And unlike the other two candidates up here, I actually did not grow up in Iowa, but I found opportunity here. And I think that this is something that all people should be able to be afforded, is the opportunity to live somewhere that they feel connected to and that they can find their community. And especially as someone who is a lot younger than a lot of other people who are involved in politics, I think that one of the biggest things we can do is make sure that our future generations have the support necessary in order to pursue whatever it is they want to do. And as someone who teaches at the university as a teaching assistant, I see a lot of students after they've graduated the K through 12 education system. And sadly, many of them are lacking the skills that they need to pursue their passions. And to me, this is really indicative of, as Ed talked about, all of the reorganization and the lack of funding that we've seen recently in public schools. It's not that students don't want to learn. It's not that teachers don't want to teach. Students want to learn. Teachers want to teach. It's just that this state is not prioritizing education. I think the number one thing we can do if we want to both attract young people to Iowa, but also to retain them, is to make sure that education is something that we are affording public dollars to for public education, and that people have the opportunities they need in order to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you all for your opening comments, and now we're going to turn to questions from league members and from the audience. The first question I'm going to throw out to you, and it kind of fits in well with what a couple of you have been saying, is from the league. Recently, we have seen in the media the concern for the brain drain from Iowa. This raises a question of how to bring back boomerang families. What will attract them back to Iowa as we consider education, recreation, the environment, and overall quality of life? That was a big question, so I need to repeat it for any of you. And Mr. Gorsh, we're gonna start with you.
Yeah, I think, at least in my lifetime, right, brain drain has been a little bit of an issue in Iowa, but typically it's only for a few years, right out of college when you want to move away and go do something different. But then people decide, hey, I'm married now, I'm ready to have kids, I want to settle down, I'm moving back home to Iowa, right, to raise my kids. And this is a destination state for people who want to raise a family. And unfortunately, I feel like with some of the decisions that have been made in Des Moines recently, that is no longer the case. And that is unfortunate. And I hope that we can make some decisions in the very near future to reverse that.
Ms. Banowski.
So, as someone who moved to a small town, I like to say that actually I'm well familiar with combating brain drain. So rather than doing the opposite of what a lot of people, are doing and moving away from small town communities, I actually grew up near Seattle and moved to Iowa because I found opportunity here. And I think one of the biggest things is affordability and making sure that people can afford a place to live, whether that's renting, whether that's home ownership, but also making sure that it's a place that they feel like, as Jay mentioned, they can raise a family. And I think that, when you're discussing what makes a good place to live, education really rings true, I think, for a lot of us, in that I want people to be educated because that makes people better residents of the place that they live. And I would think that anyone wanting to start a family would also want a quality education for those children they're bringing into the world. Thank you.
Mr. Chapel.
Okay, I think it is, again, very important that the state of Iowa is welcoming to people, and so that people that might move away or people that we want to attract see Iowa as a place that they can come and spend the rest of their lives and to raise their families. And again, the education system, as Anna discussed and I discussed earlier, it is our passion, and Jay also. It is very important that we have educated people that grow up in Iowa and that will make our communities, especially our rural communities, as we rebuild them. It will be very important that we actually have just a welcoming community for them. So again, the education is very important, and I would certainly put that as an emphasis.
Right, okay. Okay, our next question, this is from the audience. Iowa has a high cancer rate. What would you do about our groundwater is one part of the question, and then how does our area deal with farmers who spray whatever on folks who live across the road? I think this is referring to spraying on fields. So the issue is the cancer rate in Iowa and how one addresses that in terms of groundwater and spraying pesticides. And yeah, Anna, we're going to start with you.
Well, I'm not an expert in groundwater. I do think that this is an area where we could do a lot of work working with our university and with other stakeholders. Of course, we have the University of Iowa and our other regions universities. And I think working with them and seeing, not only what are the causes, but brainstorming possible solutions in order to make sure that things are fair for everybody and not just some people. Thank you.
We're going to go now to Mr. Chapo.
Okay, thank you. So again, I realize that Iowa has the second highest cancer rate in the country, behind Kentucky, I believe. It is very important that we do research to get to the bottom of this. We can't just blame one segment of our population until we actually do the research and get the facts. And again, we're very fortunate to have not only a great teaching university for medicine at the University of Iowa, but we also need to work with Iowa State University and all the research they do with their farms. Again, as agriculture has changed over the years, I'm not sure some of our methods of dealing with the increased crop production has kept up with that. So again, I think it's very important that we again work with everyone, not only the farming research institution, but also the medical community to get to the bottoms.
Yeah, this is a huge issue that I feel like people like to ignore or want to ignore or don't want to deal with. And I know it's going to be a complicated, right? It's a complicated problem, which will require a complicated solution. But the research is being done. I presented at the Nature Summit last year and will again on Thursday. And this is a topic of discussion. It was last year and it will be again this year. So there are researchers out there looking at the potential causes, what factors we need to pay attention to. And there is no smoking gun, but there are definitely things that we need to address. And yes, ag is a part of that. And will need to be a part of that solution. And we will have to work with our farmers to figure out how we can best work with them to help to solve that problem, but it won't just be limited to that. There are other areas that are going to have to be addressed and researched as well.
Okay, this next question, and I'm going to give preference to the questions from the audience over the league questions. I hope no one objects to that. This next question, current Iowa law classifies fentanyl test strips as drug paraphernalia. Thus, test strips are unavailable for drug users to check products for fentanyl contamination. Lives could be saved if testing were available. Do you support this, a change in the law to make testing okay? And we're going to start with you, Mr. Chapa.
Okay. Again, I should point out that I'm probably not an expert in this as of now, but I think that's very important as I run for the Senate to be able to work with different groups, with the medical community especially, and the law enforcement community, to be able to identify issues such as this. But I think it's very important that we do provide all the resources that we can as far as testing goes. So again, I would support that.
Okay, Mr. Bush.
Yeah, I'll echo what Ed said. This is not an area of expertise for me either, but it does seem to make sense to me and seems like common sense to me that if there are preventative measures out there, if there are things that we can do that will help, then I don't know why we wouldn't be doing them. And if the test strips can help us lessen the problem, then I would be in support of that. But again, I would need to do some research and talk to the medical field and get their opinion on that.
Ms. Banowski.
I would say that I would be in favor of it because, again, thinking about anything that we can do to make people's lives safer is something that we should be doing. And, you know, I would think talking to law enforcement, talking to medical experts and, you know, determining what measures to take would be the first step in any sort of conversation about this. But just based off of my knowledge about, the question, I would be in favor of making things safer for people.
Okay, next question. Pertains to a women's health care desert. How can Iowa reverse the recent trend of OB-GYNs leaving and delivery centers closing? I'm gonna start with you, Mr. Borsch.
Yeah, I think we need to make this a place, make this a state where those doctors feel like they can and want to work and want to be employed. And our decisions in Des Moines, as I understand it, are not making it a place where they feel safe doing that kind of work in this state because of the laws that have been passed. So I think it's going to be critically important, again, that we work with the medical community, that we look at what needs to be done to make this work for our OBGYN doctors, and follow the lead of our medical field, and let them guide us as a state.
Ms. Banowski?
I think the biggest thing is just repealing the 6-week abortion ban that we have in place currently. Besides the fact that this isn't good for the patients for any number of reasons, I would say that this is one of the main reasons that people aren't wanting to come and practice that particular type of medicine. I think that we're going to just see more and more OBGYNs leaving if we keep that law on the books and if we punish doctors for practicing medicine. And I also think that this is something that if we don't reverse that ban now, we're going to see fewer and fewer people who want to come study at the university, because we have a great medical school at the University of Iowa. But if there are types of medicine that they can't teach and people can't practice after they graduate, then they're not going to want to come here. Thank you.
And again, I think it's very important that we repeal the ban. I think that is definitely a ruling that has prevented some of their OBGYNs to come to Iowa or to stay in Iowa. So it's very important that we make them feel comfortable about making the healthcare decisions they need to make. Like right now, a lot of them are afraid of what they might do because it might be against the law, or so they have to decide, make some very tough decisions. And you can't blame a person for wanting to practice in Iowa or not wanting to practice in Iowa if they have to make those decisions every day. So again, it's very important that we make sure they are comfortable. We increase the residency programs for OBGYNs, and so again, that's a priority for me.
Okay, here's another education question, which makes a presumption. When we get the voucher program canceled, how will we get public education back on track? And Nancy, we'll let you start that one.
Okay. Well, first off, I would agree that we need to get that voucher law off the books. And I think that undoing the damage that law has caused will go quite a ways, in that anytime we can give more funding to public schools, those public schools can do a lot better. I think in addition to that, though, we need to reinstate the AEAs and give more funding to them. With many of them having to close and work with fewer resources, we've also seen a lot of people leave, whether they're just deciding to go elsewhere and going to a different state or retiring early. And so I think kind of the vouchers are one half of that example, but we also need to be aware of other things like the AEAs that are also working and getting both of those things back on track will go a long way.
Again, as Anna said, it's very important that we repeal the voucher program, because as we all know, that is just taking, public taxpayer dollars and, keeping it out of the schools, giving the public schools, giving it to the private schools unaccounted for. And that is, to me, as a finance officer that worked 27 years for a school district, that's just unfathomable to, have public taxpayer dollars go unaccounted for to a private school. But as we saw the first year, it was $150 million. This year it's supposed to be, is projected to be $170 million. But it ended up over $200 million. Next year, when all the restrictions go away, it will be over $300 million from there on out. So if we don't control it, so it's very important that we take those dollars and put them back into public schools where they belong, so that we can give our staff the raises they deserve. We can get the curriculum to the kids that they deserve.
Yeah, I love the way that was worded. Really appreciate the way that was worded. And yes, we will get that to happen. And then when we do start to build back, right? I think building back our AEAs in a way that it can be even more efficient and effective than it was, should be, we can be very intentional about doing that as a state. That way we can get those services back to our schools, and we can make the AEAs even stronger, I think, in the end than they have been. And then I think a critical piece here is our teacher preparation programs and our in-service teacher preparation that they continue to get, right? Continuing education that our existing teachers get, because the reality is we have a lot of teachers who entered the classroom in a very different place than where classrooms are right now. And those teachers need some effective training and professional development to help them deal with the newer things that they're seeing in the classroom that their teacher preparation programs didn't prepare them for. Times have changed.
What specific ideas do you have to help address childcare affordability and accessibility? And Mr. Chapel, we're going to start with you.
Okay. Again, childcare is a real concern of mine, especially in the rural communities, because if we don't have childcare in our communities, people won't move to those communities. So again, what I would take a look at is providing some incentives for daycare programs. Work with schools for preschool programs, get the funding for those. So it's very important that we do have the childcare in our communities, so that they, especially small communities, so that they can thrive. And or else, if we don't have those opportunities available, families just won't move there and stay there.
So I've traveled to Norway the last 2 summers with teams of teachers, and they run their early childhood or early childcare system very different than we do in the United States. Now, that can't necessarily be replicated here. We're a much bigger country than Norway is, and we have a much more complex country. But in the state of Iowa, there are some things we could learn from that. And taking a look at our Head Start funding is going to be a critical thing. But that focus on early childhood, and the way we view early childhood education, starting at earlier than we do, will be effective, and will be a thing we're going to need to address. But there are ways there to make childcare more affordable and available to our parents. Some areas there's very little childcare available, in other areas it's available, like Iowa City, but it's very, very expensive, and so we're going to have to address that.
Mr. Nesbitt.
I would agree that we need to make sure that we are providing incentives. I think that's a good way to increase the both accessibility and affordability aspect. I would also be in favor of looking into where maybe states or counties can work with existing schools to either create new programs, or where there are programs in place for early childhood care, increasing the funding for that so that it's built into the school and it's already kind of a part of those programs as well.
Okay, this one is gonna be an easy one, because it's like a yes or no, I think. Maybe. This is from Iowa County, someone from Iowa County. Our current senator and representative have had no legislative public forums in Iowa County since they were elected 2 years ago. Will you commit to holding multiple well-publicized legislative forums in your districts each year? And we'll start with Mr. Borsch.
Yeah, that reality is unacceptable to me. As I said before, stakeholder involvement to me is critical. And obviously, if forums are not being held, you're not getting stakeholder involvement. You are not representing your constituents. So that is something that will change when elected. You will see forums, and you will see specific forums around certain issues that we are dealing with as a state, and then general forums that are looking at more open-ended discussion about what we can do to improve our state. But absolutely, those will happen, and those will happen regularly, and the fact that they are not is appalling to me.
Ms. Pulaski.
Yes, I think the main thing, I mean, it's in the name, right? State representative, and how are you going to represent the people if you're not meeting with the people? So while I would commit to doing forums, I think it's also a question of making sure that those forums are accessible to people. Because as it is in my district currently, we only had the forums during legislative session once a month during the lunch hour, extending far enough beyond the lunch hour that if you have a job that requires you to be somewhere, you couldn't go. So I would say that not only do I want to have more forums to be more available, but I want to offer them at different times so that maybe you can't come to one that's at noon on a Friday, but maybe you can come to one that's maybe during this time on a Monday, or over the weekend, or whenever I'm available. I want my people to also feel that they can come and see me, whether that's an official forum or even something like an office hour.
And again, very much a yes. As Anna said, in Washington, which is in my district, they have the forums down on Friday at noon. And again, is that reaching all the people? No, it's not. It's not reaching the working people. So it's very important that we offer them at different times of the day or the evening, like this. They are supposed to be our elected representatives. So they should be able to meet with the people. They might rely on you answering their or asking them questions via email or calling them up, but what I've heard from many people is that they won't respond to emails. They won't respond to calls. So again, it's very important that we do offer forums so that people can talk about the issues that are really affecting them.
Okay, a different topic. What are your views on banning single-use plastics and plastic bags? Please state your views on how we can combat global warming. Just a couple of thoughts. And Ms. Banowski, let's start with you.
Well,
Small topic.
yeah, definitely a very big question there. So one thing that I think we could look into, and meeting with stakeholders and seeing the feasibility of this. But I've lived some places where it's 5 or 10 cents per bag, right? So you can bring your own bag, you don't have to. But there is that sort of built-in incentive, kind of like the can tax, right? We all pay 5 cents for a can or a bottle. You can redeem that when you recycle it in a center and get that back. So maybe some sort of something like that. But I guess the way I'm kind of conceiving of it is maybe that 5 cents goes to the DNR, right? Maybe that goes to cleaning up our waterways. So it's not just a tax to prevent you from doing, that from the act of like having a plastic bag, but that might be a way that we could look into solving that issue.
Yes, I certainly realize that there is an issue with, the climate change. But I know that I can't solve that alone. I need to reach out to, people, experts on both sides of the aisle. And we need to work together to solve the problems. As far as like, single-use plastics, again, I would agree with Anna that perhaps we can, take some of that money and invest that in, research, invest that in, ways that we can clean up our water. So it is definitely an issue. And again, something that needs to be addressed, not only in Iowa, but, worldwide.
Yeah, as a conservation guy, right, single-use plastic straws, those kind of things, the grocery bags, it's hard for me to stomach. Now, what do we do about it? And I think that's a creative idea, and I love the idea of taking money and putting back into conservation organizations, so that you can kind of use that money to combat the problem. But I think we need to take it even a step further. I think our consumer society that we've created and the overconsumption that we have as Americans, is something that needs to be addressed. We don't need all the stuff, but the stuff is constantly being pushed on us. And it's just not, we don't need it in our lives. That's a reality. Now, how can we reverse that mentality? We need to find some sexy way to do that so that it will become, cool, yeah, to not overconsume, right? And the fact that a thrift store is not a bad place to get some clothes because it's gently used and we can use it again. But anyways, I could go on and on.
Okay, now to, a lesser topic or an easier topic, might I say? What would you support or propose to address housing needs for low-income people and the homeless? Let's see, Mr. Chalmers, we're starting with you.
Is that an easier topic?
It's just very easy.
Again, I think that we need to, we know that there is a real housing issue that faces our community, especially our rural communities, but also our urban communities. We need to make sure that we are working with the city governments to find out how we can address the issues of how we can make affordable housing in their communities. We need to perhaps incentivize them to do that. But again, I would certainly reach out to many different stakeholder groups to find out what we need to do in order to ease the issues.
Yeah, again, stakeholder involvement is going to be critical. We need to work with our developers. I think there could be incentives put in place. Home ownership is part of the American dream, right? Getting to own a home is an important milestone in life, rite of passage, all those things. But we need to work with our developers, I think, and create some incentives to build more small homes, small, simple, clean, attractive, charming little homes. We don't need all the square footage. I think most people would be happier in a smaller space at a more affordable price tag. But I also get it. If I'm the developer and I have a lot and I can put as big a house on there as I can and sell it for more money, I get that. So we're going to have to create some incentives for developers to get back to those smaller, simple, nice, charming little homes for families.
One of the things that I would like to do is to come up with a way that we can actually help people, whether that's with rent or with something like a mortgage. So one of the things that I've been discussing is this idea that, when you go to rent a new place, you're often asked for deposit that's 1 month's rent, sometimes, first and last. So the equivalent of 3 months rent. And so I think that the conversation needs to start with, are there ways in which, we can offer support for people for renting or for putting a down payment on the house and saying, okay, for renting, could we offer people within, a certain threshold of income, some sort of money to allow them to move in upfront and say, look, we're acting as the guarantor. And when, when you get that money back at the end, you're not paying up front for something that you essentially won't get back, right?
Okay.
Didn't have enough time to answer you. Yeah. Then it went by fast.
I'm gonna try just one more, because I think we've got enough time. And this is a league question, and yeah. Iowa has always valued local control. How do you recommend the legislature protect the concept of local control going forward? And this time we're starting with you, Mr. Gorge.
Good question.
Yeah, so I think we need to look at the areas that make sense, to have local control, and the areas that really make sense to have larger state government, oversight, right, or control. And be intentional about that, and give communities a chance to grow, and make the decisions that are best for their communities with guidance from Des Moines, and oversight from Des Moines, rather than Des Moines driving it. And then communities having to figure out how to work around decisions that have been made in Des Moines in order to best serve their communities. So I don't know if that concisely answers the question, but I do think we need to look at where those lines can be drawn.
I also think that, there's too many things that our state government is getting involved with that really are best left up to whether it's a county or a municipality, but just smaller forms of government where you have more oversight as a voter, right? It's easier to talk to your mayor than it is for you to say, call up Governor Reynolds and say, hey, don't like this decision, right? So anytime we can make things easier on the people and something that can be handled by local control, I think we need to do that. And I think also we need to stop this idea of having unfunded mandates where Des Moines not only passes something and says, yeah, the county needs to do this, but then passes that along for the county to collect the money for whatever that project is. Because that's also putting a lot of burden on smaller communities that just simply can't figure out what they're supposed to do when they don't have that control.
In my 27 years of school finance experience, I was also school board secretary for Mount Pleasant Community Schools, and so I worked very closely with the school boards there. Over the past 5 years, probably, I've seen a lot of changes in the form of local control. It seems like the politicians in Des Moines want to get more involved with making the decisions that our school boards need to, because they are the people that live in the communities. They are the people that know the students. They are people know the staff. They are the best suited for that. So we don't need the politicians telling us or telling the teachers what they need to teach, or what books should be in the library. So again, that's very important to me. So I've seen that firsthand what's happened, but I also know it occurs in municipalities too, and that a lot of decisions are being made without consulting the counties.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, we're on to closing statements now. So each of you have 2 minutes to make your closing statement. And Ms. Banowski, we'll just start with you.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. It was great to hear from the audience and from the league and get to know what some of the things are that you guys are concerned about. I just want to reiterate that one of my main issues is education and making sure that our private schools aren't receiving money that ought to be given to public schools. Because our public schools are what makes society equal, in my opinion, right? And so I want to make sure that our money is going towards public education and that all students are given a fair shot. And my other policies that I've been working on throughout my time campaigning have been reproductive freedom, making sure that everyone has the ability to make decisions on if, when, and how they become a parent, because that is a really individual decision. And I think that if we don't have autonomy over our own bodies, we quite simply don't have any freedom at all. And lastly, I want to make sure that people are able to receive mental health care regardless of where they live. So right now, and Washington County is no exception to this, you have to go pretty far out of your way to find mental health care, whether that's a crisis center, whether that is just day-to-day access. And I don't think that we should be okay with this happening, right? We should make sure that our most vulnerable members of society are protected, because when everyone, when our most vulnerable members of society are protected and are doing well, we're all doing much better. And I think that this is something that we definitely need to be mindful of moving forward. Thank you.
Again, thank everyone for coming tonight. It was great to hear the questions from the audience, because that, in my opinion, is the only way that the candidates for the incumbents will know what the issues are. And unfortunately, the incumbents were not in attendance tonight and do not take those opportunities to hear from the constituents. And again, to me, that is one of their most important jobs, to be able to listen to the people, to interact with them, not always agree with them. But again, I would like to think of myself as a person that will reach out to both sides of the aisle, a common sense person that will listen to the people. And again, that's very important to me. You heard tonight that Ed is for education, so that is very big to me. Again, making sure our public schools are funded, making sure that our AEAs are back to the speed that they needed to be. We had over 400 people that were quit or retired from the AEAs this year. And again, they offer so many services that our schools need. Are not only our students, especially our special needs students, but also the staff. That is, the professional development they receive is so valuable. And as Jay said earlier, what the classroom was like 5-10 years ago is not what it is today. And so they need that specialized training in order to make sure that they are effectively teaching our students and giving them the best education possible. So again, I would like to reach out to everyone, and if people email me or call me, I need to respond to them. So, thank you.
First of all, thanks for hosting this and providing an opportunity to talk. This has been fun. This is my first ever forum. What do we need to do? I think is kind of the critical thing, right? I feel like as a state, we've strayed a bit, and I think we can get back, right? I think we've strayed a bit from protecting our freedoms. I think we've strayed a bit from Iowa Nice. We need to get back to some decency and being neighborly. I remember when I moved to Wisconsin, which is a lovely state. It's my second favorite state in the country. But I remember feeling so proud of Iowa and how we wave to everyone and we're friendly to everyone and we work our butts off, not only in our day-to-day jobs, but often in side jobs or extra jobs or second jobs, whatever you want to call them. And I think that's really what's made our state great. We've protected our small towns. Our state has been built on small towns, and I think we can and will get back to that. We just need to refocus. I feel like maybe we've gotten a little too caught up in some of the extremes and some of what's going on nationally. And I feel like if we could just get back a little bit more to our Iowa roots and what has always made us great as a state, we can find our path again and draw those families back that we talked about, improve our education, get us back to #1. And get this back to a place where families are proud to live and where people feel welcomed and where people feel safe and where people appreciate just how lovely Iowa folks are.
Thank you to all of you. It's been very interesting. The recording of this forum will be available on the Facebook page of the League of Women Voters. We would like to remind you that the views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and that sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. Remember, early voting opens October 16th at your county auditor's office is where most of the early voting is, although there may be other locations as well in your communities. Election Day is November 5th. Thanks all for coming.